Well, good evening. We have another 2 hours to talk about Book of Revelation's prophecies that I've been digging into for the last 10 years plus, and that talk about, that reveal all things about T and Do, the two witnesses. And I will get on to other topics actually, but there's always loose ends that I know I left behind when I re-listened to these broadcasts, and so I wanted to try to address those. Plus, I went to a bunch of YouTube channels that were broadcasting using the terminology that they are, the seals are being revealed in the book of Revelations, and then when you go to their site, they say the same things that everybody's been saying for years. But it gave me a chance to leave a little message with everybody. I must have left a message with 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 different YouTube preachers, and many of their commenters. Just a little blurb about what I believe a lot of the prophecies are saying in the bottom line, which is basically saying that T and Do were the two witnesses. And I'm going to get right to it. Instead of summarizing, I want to get into the detail more. Like, for instance, I'm going to basically talk about the things that the Christians are saying that I maybe haven't addressed completely before. What's that thing doing there? Okay. Oh yeah, I will be uploading this, the video part of this, to my YouTube channel, 3SPM. And also I'm broadcasting on Vimeo. Is that how you say that? Vimeo, I think it is. Vimeo, yes. So you can watch it there after I upload it tonight. And so I want to start with actually Revelations 11:4, and you don't have to worry about cutting and pasting that, Kitty. I'll just do it right now. I'm getting good at it. Oh, I thought I'm getting good at it, but I forgot that I got to do it a certain way with this guy. I guess I should have prepared ahead of time with that too. Oh, what are you going to do? I'm not a very prepared guy, am I? Ah, there it is. Okay, so that's saying these are the two olive trees, talking about the two witnesses. First of all, before that it says, I will give power. It doesn't actually say power. It just says, I will give unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. We've talked about that in the past. T and Do fulfilled that by prophesying from January 1st, 1973 to mid-June 1976. Actually, they stopped actually talking on April 21st, 1976, but they told their students to continue to give meetings on their behalf to finish up the meetings that they had scheduled at the time when T said she closed the harvest. So, and they were definitely clothed in sackcloth, although, like I've said before, in the movie with John Forsythe playing Bo, the name that he used in 1975 and 76, the name that became dough later on, they depicted T and Doe, or Bo and Peep, as wearing long robes and looking very holy and spiritual. And they were nothing like that at all. If you see pictures of them, like from the New York Times cover page of the magazine section or anywhere else, you'll see exactly the way they looked all the time. They just wore windbreakers and slacks. They never wore jeans or anything trendy or fashionable. They were plain Jane dressers. Vanilla. T's favorite ice cream flavor was vanilla. And anyway, so this next verse is Revelations 11:4. It says, "These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth." Now, I watched a preacher say this, talk about this verse, and he went to the chapter in Zechariah, which I'm going to switch to here for the video. What the heck? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, there it is. There it is. I almost messed myself up again. And actually, I want to switch now down to Zechariah, where it says that, talks about Zechariah having experience with being taken into the, let me get to it actually if I can. Yeah, Zechariah talks about going to, let's see, right here. An angel talked with me, came up again and waked me as a man wakened out of sleep, and said, see the candlestick of gold and the bowl on top of it, 7 lamps, 7 pipes, 7 lamps are top, the 2 olive trees, one the right side of the bowl, the other the left side of the bowl. And the angel then went on to say that these angels are a great mountain. Well, that's very interesting that he compares them to a mountain, because that's what Jerusalem, the name Jerusalem came from, the dual mountain, the 2 mountains. It's one. There's a number of different interpretations of the word Jerusalem, the English word Jerusalem, that I forgot how to pronounce it in the Hebrew words, but it's not important. But if you take them apart, the Hebrew words for Jerusalem, you'll see that it can be has a relationship to the peace, P-E-A-C-E, and also the abode of God's angels, the dwelling of God's angels, and that's what happened there. That's where, talking about Jerusalem was where, of course, Jesus incarnated into the vehicle in Bethlehem, and basically did most of his prophecies and teachings and gathering of his flock that were prepared to identify him in that area, in that small area, for the second trimester of the birth. So anyway, so in Zechariah here, he says, then Zechariah asks him, what's the meaning of these 2 olive trees on the right side of the candlestick and the left side? And he said that these 2 olive branches through 2 golden pipes empty the golden oil. Well, the oil is the mind of the next level, because it's when you burn the oil, when you use it, when you exercise it, when you give it out to others, you're consuming the oil is what you're doing. And when you consume the oil, it produces light. And that's the symbolism that is with olive oil. And that's why extra virgin olive oil, first cold pressing, is the healthiest olive oil to consume, because if it's done right, it's living. It's got all the enzymes in it that you need for your body. So it's a healthy oil to consume. It's worth it to spend the money on the best stuff when it comes to that. So then the next verse in Zechariah says, that is the one that I wanted to come to in chapter 4. It says that these are the two anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. Now, if you look at the meaning of anointed, it says it's Yitzhah from I'm not sure how to pronounce that one there, but you can bear with me on that. Almost said a naughty four-letter word there. And anyway, oil is basically saying that it's oil. So the two oiled ones, or anointed with oil, is what that's actually saying, as producing light. So it's the two anointed ones are the two that produce light by giving off their light as a result of consuming the oil, which the oil is the bread that comes down from heaven, which is the sustenance, which is the mind of the next level. So the older member, in this case, the father, in the case of relationship with Jesus, since I'm talking about these prophecies of the two witnesses, and we're using the illustrations that Jesus gave with saying that when your eye is single, your whole body is filled with light. And when your eye is single, it means you're giving your all to your older member. And that's what Moses and Jesus both taught was necessary to actually graduate into a membership in the level above human, which doesn't come overnight. It takes. It might take. It seems to always take, at least for this civilization, 3 trimesters of experiences working through a human vehicle that you're overcoming as you work through it, and you have to be incarnate with the older member to actually take you through that, so that you know what it is that you need to overcome. Because if you rely on humans to try to tell you what to overcome, you'll never get to the right place, because you'll always have ego to deal with, because you won't be because there'll always be battles of ego. Like even with the ascended masters, they had to be the ones that were that knew everything, and yet the answers they gave to everything were so general, and they didn't have anybody they were looking to. See, that's the key there. That's how you can tell a false teacher, or a false Christ, or a false prophet from a real prophet. The real prophet knows that they're not the top of the heap, and knows that there's another person, another individual, another living being, not a nebulous universal mind or a cosmic consciousness. That's all the way the Luciferians have designed it to be now, because that's the way they think. They think that everybody has access all the ultimate information to actually get off this planet and grow to have your own kingdom, your own, which members of the next level don't really want their own kingdom. They don't want their own kingdom at all. It's only because their older members instruct them to work with the students that they do it. You see, so there's a big difference. That's why with T and Do, they didn't need students because their instruction, they were working for their older members, which happened to be, for Do, was T. But actually, in reality, T was the one who set up the limitations that she and Do were going to experience as they were awakening. She was the older member that they were actually trying to communicate with while they were in physical bodies, because her mind had grown to be so large and so potent and so powerful and so expansive that she could operate more than one project at a time. She could be feeding a part of her mind into that vehicle that was called T, that awakened that vehicle, at the same time as she could be doing other things on the spacecraft, wherever she was. And who knows, maybe she could do even more than that. I don't know how many different things she could do at the same time, but that's what you grow to be able to do. So talking about multitasking and talking about interesting, challenging things to do, these are all very challenging, because T, the part of her mind that was in that vehicle, was experiencing all the frustrations and toils of trying to wake Do up, and then with Do, gathering the students, dealing with all the Luciferian space aliens in the unseen world, and dealing with all the humans that were acting on behalf of the Luciferian space aliens, whether they knew it or not, because of the history. Like for instance, all the Christians that believed that the two witnesses couldn't come in a certain way, and they certainly couldn't talk about reincarnation. That would mean that they were New Age, and although Jesus said he was coming back in the New Age, the terms New Age meant to them that it was Luciferian. Well, who put that idea in their heads, that the New Age was going to be Luciferian? The Luciferians did that. The space aliens did that, because they wanted to entrap the Christians who were generally being prepared for the arrival and return of the Father and the Son together. Now, I didn't want to get too far into that, even though it's very interesting, in my mind, constantly interesting, to think about how this all was coming together. It is a challenge for T, even outside her vehicle, to provide the instructions and the motivation and the overview and all the things that's required so that the vehicle, Bonnie Nettles, that was chosen for this task and accepted that task. It's no casual thing for any human vehicle to accept such a challenging task. Now, I think the fact that there was so much mind coming from T and Do into those two vehicles, that the vehicles really didn't have much of a choice. But I don't know if technically, if they still had a little bit of choice, they could have refused it. And I don't know what would have happened if that happened. But that's beside the point. It's not necessary for us to understand. But I guess they could just get another vehicle. And they probably had a backup, because the next level don't do things willy-nilly. They have backup plans. Because the whole thing is they don't know exactly what the humans are going to do. They know in general they know exactly what the space aliens are going to do, but they don't know how it's going to apply to the human kingdom. So they don't know exactly what the humans are going to do based on what the space aliens do. And when I say space aliens, I'm also talking about the fallen angels, the Nephilim, the ones that died, that were the product of the fallen angels with their hybridization program, or their propagating of humans by mixing their sperm with the human eggs of the mortal humans in the land, wherever they were at the time, I guess in the Middle East area. And those individuals that in a previous civilization actually ended up being the birth of the human civilization that grew to have technology and then went underground to hide from the recycling of the next level. So when the Noah flood came, all the flood did was get rid of all the offspring of those space aliens at that time, and then just saved the whatever genetic human vehicles that the next level wanted to save on the planet, and it could have been in more locations than just the Noah, wherever Noah and his family was. There could have been others, because there were others created before Adam and Eve as well that existed. And it says that right in Genesis chapter 1 somewhere. But that he first the Lord created male and female. And then he told them to be fruitful and multiply. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't talking to Adam and Eve. He wasn't telling Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. They didn't even have the capacity to be fruitful and multiply when they were actually planted or grown actually, or created actually, is actually the more realistic way of saying it, because Adam didn't come from the womb of a woman. So his vehicle was built in some other fashion to provide this experiment. Anyway, so when they all died, when those fallen angels died, which were basically dropouts from whatever next level program was happening at the time with the older members at the time, which would have been the father and might have been same as T and Doe. Doe might have been the son then too. What I actually suspect though is that Doe was equivalent to the one that was called Lucifer. But I think the one that was called Lucifer came from the previous civilization before the Enoch fallen angels were depicted. Because in Enoch verses, there is no name Lucifer. There's no name even related to Lucifer. So I suspect that he fell from the previous civilization, because Doe got his start actually on a different planet. So I would suspect that Lucifer got his start on a different planet as well with Doe, because T told us that Lucifer was Doe's rival. And Lucifer is unseen. He's in the discarnate world, that individual that's called Lucifer. But before he died, he did participate in propagating from his sperm and egg combinations to where there were offspring of his that he groomed to be carry on his work. And then those are the ones that would have gone to be behind all the development of technology, even though when they died, if the humans hadn't grown technologically yet, then they would have remained in their underground base, where actually they were forced to go by the recycling that was taking place on the planet's surface. And so they were forced to go underground. Perhaps that was inside the Earth, in what was called the Antarctica or the North Pole area, the Hollow Earth ideas. Perhaps it was that. that area, but that could be anywhere. There could be a lot of different, there could be entrances on the poles, okay? There's no question that there could be entrances, as Admiral Byrd discovered and documented to some degree, and there was some relationship with that and the things that Hitler was involved with, which we've talked about before, but we don't know how many different places there are where you can actually go underground and hide from, even within the oceans, to where you could hide from a recycling or from a deluge of water, like in the ocean, for instance. So, I know I went through a lot of stuff there fast, but so be it. I want to get back to this verse here because if you have any questions, write them to me on my YouTube channel, and where I'll post this, and I'll try to clarify all the points that I miss at the next broadcast, if I keep track of them. I don't really take notes, but I have to go by memory, I guess. But so if you ask me those questions, though, I will take notice. Anyway, but because I know I left a lot of big holes there. But general overview, I think, was there. So what the Christians aren't saying in these broadcasts that they're doing on YouTube and other places, when they actually talk about deciphering the Revelation chapter 11, they'll take you to the Zechariah verse here where it says that they're the two anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth, but they won't relate the word anointed to what it means in the Greek. And who's keeping them from that? Because if they actually go over here and they see that it's related to oil as producing light, because if you go to this verse here, it says to glisten. That's what the root of this word that we started to look at. I kept on going back in what Strong's Concordance was showing me, and it took me to 6671, which is pronounced TSAW-HAR accent mark. So I'm not sure how you say that. Tsar maybe? Tar? I don't know. And it means to glisten. So that's talking about light. And then it even takes you back to 3323. Well, that's back to the other one. So it's taking you back to the same round robin there. But let me get back to that. Oh, I went too far. Well, I don't need to go any further than that with this one. So let me get over here, switch back to the scene here. So that's what the two olive trees, that's where that's come from. A great deal of revelations from John comes from the Old Testament. From Zechariah, from Daniel, from Isaiah. Primarily those are the three biggest ones. Elijah, to some degree. A lot from Moses, of course. Oh yeah, a tremendous amount from Moses. Those are the main ones, though, that things are coming from. And Enoch, but since Enoch wasn't included in the Old Testament or the New Testament, which was utterly ridiculous because Jesus referred to Enoch and Jesus' disciples referred to Enoch. So why in the world wouldn't the ones that put these books together, that book together called the Bible, why wouldn't they have included Enoch? I mean, and then when it showed up in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the Essenes had the book of Enoch, they should have added it at that point. But of course they won't add anything because they don't want to know anymore. They don't want anybody to see any more truth because then they'll see how upside down they are. And then they'll lose their followers. That was the reason the high priests of the Jewish religions, the sects at the time, sect, S-E-C-T-S, they weren't sexy, I don't think. The sectists, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the the scribes and which were the ones that were recording, writing the books and copying the manuscripts and stuff. They didn't want to see changes. So, and the candlesticks, this has to do with saying that the candlestick is the vehicle. The physical vehicle is the candlestick. And the mind that's inside that candlestick, the oil, is what's inside that candlestick, which the candle, the wick of that candlestick is basically going into the oil. It's also considered, it's actually in the Old Testament, it's considered to be a lamp and a lampstand. I don't know when the term candlestick came about, but if you actually look at the meaning of it, it'll probably give you some roots, but I don't want to go there right now. But they're standing before the God of the earth. It's saying the same exact thing as it said in Zechariah. Standing before. Now standing means you're literally standing in a physical vehicle. That's the only way you can stand. Because all this has to do with the fact that when the older members of the next level come, they always come through a physical vehicle. They either come and take over that physical vehicle by being born into it, by putting some of their seed in it, a certain kind of seed that's different than the first kind of seed that a new believer gets, but it's a type of seed that kind of basically just reserves that vehicle for them. That's why Doe talked about how they were actually borrowing those vehicles. And they gave them back, but they gave them back basically, to be buried or cremated or whatever. But they gave them back. It still went back. It still went back into the earth. So they took them from the earth and they gave it back to the earth, the materials. And the mind of that vehicle also went back into the earth and went into the spirit world. Now, I don't know what happened to it after it went into the spirit world, whether the next level can actually build that mind into a next level being as well. But I don't even know if the vehicles that were prepared for T and Doe had any other different mind. They might have been specially prepared so that the output of their brain, and everything they were experiencing was all generated by the mind that was being brought in from the next level older members. Mind is the same thing as Holy Spirit when it's the mind of a next level older member. And it's holy because it's pure. And pure simply means it doesn't have any human characteristics. It's above human. It's an evolutionary strata above human. That's why they talked about it as a gulf and a chasm. There's a chasm of difference between the next level and the earth, the human kingdom on earth. And that gulf cannot be crossed unless the next level gives someone the keys to it. That's why the gurus that aren't actually in touch with a member of the next level, the teachers or the ascended masters, or if they're not in touch with, they don't have a connection, if they haven't formed a bond, it's like a grafting onto the branch. It said that these are the two olive trees. Actually, olive branches is the same word as trees there in Revelations 11:4. So if they haven't grafted, the only way you can graft is by actually physically being with that older member. And that starts when that older member is here and they leave behind their information. And then even though somebody didn't have a physical relationship with that individual, if they adhere to and talk to that individual and ask that individual to be on their team, to help them become members of their team, to help them graduate into their kingdom, into their evolutionary level above human, then they are starting to form that bond, because it's a mental bond that's actually forming. So You do have to be physically with them to graduate up a notch in school, but you form that initial bond mentally by having, by wanting to, by desire. That's why Jesus said you have to ask, you have to knock, you have to desire it. And it's not a casual desire. If it's just casual, then they'll help you, but they'll help you build your thirst. And I'm not sure how that will happen, but it's going to be through challenges. And those challenges are not going to be easy, but they won't give you challenges that you can't handle. They always help their students. And the student might say, the vehicle of the student, which Stephen Tindall called the physical bodies vehicles, just like horses, like in Zechariah actually talks about the human vehicles being horses. It's another thing that you don't hear the Christians talking about, how they're actually depicted as horses. Because if they thought that way, then they would start to look at Revelations chapter 6, where it talks about the four horses of the Apocalypse: the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the green or the pale green horse. Well, if they looked at that and they thought that the horses were actually human vehicles, then they might start to wonder whether the black horse is Obama, like I've been trying to tell people. And it was the red horse of the Republican ruddy complexion human Caucasian, which Adam, remember, was ruddy. Actually, that's what Adam meant. It meant also blood in face, red skin, and I'm not sure. I think this goes back to the redcoats of the English. I think that's where that came from. And my Irish friend, who is a believer in Tiendo from Ireland, he can probably tell me a lot about the origin of the color red with the redcoats of the English. So that's Diode I'm talking about, and he might be listening to this right now, but I don't need a phone call on that, but for a future broadcast, I'd sure like to talk about it. Because what I'm saying is that the red horse of those four horses of the Apocalypse was Bush and Blair, or Bush and company. It doesn't have to, but Blair was much involved. If Blair didn't go along with it, I'm not sure they could have pulled it off as easily, because they would have had so many objections from the European Union and everybody else. I'm not sure if they could have pulled off those invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq that the English participated in. So they're basically in the same bed together. And so they're all the redcoats as far as I'm concerned. And that's and I'm not saying that the Democratic Party are anything better than the Republican Party. They're not. In fact, if you look at Democrat, I can't help it every time I see that, and I also see denomination. Well, it's not related to that, but in a sense, political parties are like denominations of religions, right? Because the religions are belief systems, and the political parties are belief systems. They have their own ideology, and they have their own agendas, just like the different denominations. And it's interesting that denomination has this word in the front of it that's D-E-M-O-N. Like it's a demon nation. And then you have where Jesus said that when you see the abomination that makes desolation, that Daniel prophesied, and you see abomination, it sounds the same, and you can say, well, that's ridiculous. How could that come to be? But the next level, they actually have fun with that kind of stuff. That's fun for them, to give us all these little tiny clues that we can then, put together, and like all the numbering systems that are in this, that are throughout the Old Testament and through Daniel, and the 12s and the 7s and the 3.5s and the relationships of all those numbers with the 1260 and the 1290, and I can go on and on and on. The times and the half times, and all the different things in the prophecies that I do talk about, all have significance. And you've got humans running around like crazy with all these calculations. Just about drives me crazy. I can't really follow it all. If anybody out there that's got a mathematical mind, I'm going to actually give them some tasks. Not give them tasks, but suggest that they try to figure out what this stuff is talking about. So boil it down to something simple that my brain can understand. But that's another little thing that I might ask Dyer about, because I know he's got an engineering degree. But I started rambling there. Ramble. But yeah, so if they saw those horses as human vehicles, then they would say, well, if Bush was the red horse, because he brought endless war, that's what it says in Revelation chapter 6. Since I'm on it, I might as well go over there. I'm going to skip past the white horse because I know who the white horse is. That's the Applewhite horse. Those vehicles' name was Applewhite. And it was said in another part of Revelations, chapter 4, or 3 or 4, 3 actually, that he's got a white head and white hair, like snow, compared to snow. So it's not, and wool. That's what it was compared against. And if you look at those hair, well, actually, his head was compared to wool, and his hair was compared to snow. In case you're thinking that he should have curly hair, because wool on a sheep is curly, which that wasn't the way it was depicted. And the snow was like snow was talking about the color of it. And so, when Doe went public as Bo, he actually, even though he was in his mid-40s at the time, he already had whitish hair. It wasn't like white, like albino white at that time. It became whiter, but it started off being white, or white enough. I mean, if you're gonna, if that was the only prophecy that he fulfilled, I would say, yeah, don't, because anybody that had white hair wasn't going to fulfill the prophecy. But all things considered, that he was a white person in terms of the pigment of his skin. That's just the way the Next Level planned it. Doesn't mean that the white race was anything better. In fact, he took that vehicle because of how corrupt the white race was at that point. That's why he took that vehicle, so that he could experience what it would be like to be in a vehicle that thinks they are gods, because they're white. Because the Luciferians wanted to make the whites think that they're gods, because then it would distort the fact that the older member was going to come back in a white vehicle, because the Luciferians knew what the prophecy said. Because they were standing there in their discarnate form, listening when they were deciphering all this. And they were trying to mislead the ones that were doing the translations, so that they wouldn't tell the full truth that they knew about. Because the Luciferians knew a lot about how the garden grew. Now we're talking about the discarnates. The space aliens now are the offspring from the original fallen angels that had human equivalent vehicles. Even though they were some of them were from different planets, they originally, they still had, even though the planets still had human equivalent vehicles. That's the terminology Tian Do used, human equivalent. Because Tiendo said that before they actually came incarnate, they had a meeting. And in that meeting, they gave a number of the space aliens that they allowed to come here from other planets through wormholes the option to actually go through the birth canal and be born and then receive an eternal next level vehicle, physical body that doesn't come about through propagation of sperm and egg. That's why it's a made vehicle. It's constructed. It doesn't mean it's not grown, but it's grown without mammalian method of propagation. Because that's totally inefficient for them, and who knows what other reasons there are, but because they're not mammals. They designed it this way so that the mammalian kingdom, the human kingdom of mammals, would have to the individuals that they planted seeds of those humans that they planted their deposits in, and a deposit is a soul, is a deposit. So they put those deposits in those vehicles so that they would have something to work against, to build their minds. That's what, and they would, and to have something to work against required their free will to choose to work against it. So they had to be given a little piece of next level mind so that they would even know that there was a next level existed, and so that we would even know that that the object was to return to the next level, because that's where that mind came from, the original seed piece of the mind from their older member. So the older member is the seeder, the Johnny Appleseed, and the older member is putting a piece of their mind literally in each human vehicle that they want to give a chance to grow to become a tree in the next level with them, a branch actually on their tree. And then that branch then becomes, has branches that grow out from it. So it becomes closer and closer to looking like a root. You get the picture. It's more like a vine. That's why Jesus talked about it that way, I think, than actually a tree, but it is also a tree. However, so for someone coming along here and reading this verse in Revelation 6, now each of these seals here, and when he had opened the second seal, which actually Jesus opens the first seal, as I said at the end of the last broadcast, opening of the seal is releasing the information, is providing their mind, is providing the pathway, which they do through their words. That's why John, in the book of John, talks about Jesus is the Word. Because mind and the Word and mind and spirit are all the same thing. Information from the next level, the Word from the next level, is the light. It is what is also needs to be consumed and digested. And digesting it means applying it, what it means. That means accepting it, believing in it 100%. Even if you don't understand it 100%, it means believing it 100%, that you will understand it in time. And then letting that change you. Because it also comes with changes in behavior and ways. And some of the changes of behavior and ways, the changes in behaviors and ways are spelled out in language. The next level don't let their students just try to guess what they're supposed to change about themselves. And perhaps the biggest thing to change is actually the ego. Self-awareness, self-fulfillment, self-determination, self-grandizement, self-consciousness, I guess. There's another word for self there, that self-realization, as Yogananda taught. All those things are part of the Luciferian mind, and which are now also saturated into the human kingdom, so that there's lots of people running around, and that's what they believe they're looking for, self. And they want to be an individual. They want to be, and they say that the New Age, a lot of the New Age people say that that if we're looking external to ourselves, then we're not going to find the source of all truth, because the source of all truth is inside us. Because we have the divine inside us. And why do they say this? Because Jesus said that the kingdom of God is within you. But they don't go on to understand what he meant by that. And whenever an older member says something, they mean a number of things by it. What it actually meant, when you actually decipher those terms, it meant that it's at your reach, at your touch, within your reach, within your ability to grasp and understand and gravitate to and grow from. But it also meant that it's within you because the next level gives you the seed. That without the seed deposit, you would not recognize the older member. But at that point, that's the extent to which the kingdom of God is within you. It's when a member of the kingdom of God's mind is in you that the kingdom of God is within you, like I said, with the deposit. And that needs to grow. Just getting the seed doesn't guarantee that seed's going to come out of the ground and sprout and then grow, and doesn't guarantee that it's going to end up producing fruit, seeds, more seeds, that it can spread and then make more seeds, more plants to the next level. This is the way the next level gets their new members. They don't need them, but the more they have, the more opportunities they offer for others. But they're not in a hurry. And we don't know. Tienda said that there were not millions of members of the next level. They used the number thousands. They said there were thousands. They didn't say whether it was tens or hundreds of thousands. They just said there were thousands of members of the next level. When I say members of the next level, I'm talking about the ones that graduated and no longer have a human vehicle that can actually, or a vehicle that could actually revert in a reverse metamorphosis back into human behaviors, like the fallen angels did, because they didn't have next level vehicles. They had in between human and next level vehicles. So if you go down here in Revelation 6, another thing that Christians get wrong is they say that in the white horse, that he who sat on the white horse had a bow. Well, that bow, they say the bow is like a bow and arrow. And because it says conquer later on, that he goes conquering, they think that he's going to basically be a warrior. And it's true, he is a warrior, but it's the war with his mouth. He does war by mouth, by the words that he uses. And fire in their words, because their words are actually devour. Their words consume their enemy's mind. Well, not, I don't mean to say it that way. They consume the enemy because the enemy can't stand up to them in any way, because they know the truth about all things. They don't know the truth about all things immediately, because if they knew the truth about all things immediately, they would be too far ahead of their students, and they wouldn't know how to relate to their students when they're incarnate in the human kingdom. So they have to be fed a step at a time. That's why T and Do didn't, some of the things they said didn't come to pass exactly like they said them. But if you actually look at what they said, you will see that they still did come to pass. And I'm not going to go through that right now, but I will in a future broadcast. But that bow, B-O-W, right there, is you can't find any background for it. This is the only place that's used in the whole New Testament. And also, or if it's used in any other places in the New Testament, I should actually make sure that might not be true. It says it's only one space in it. It's actually the Greek word toxon. And it says it's from the base of 5088, which, well, I don't want to spend time on that right now. You can go look it up. But it's not that important. But the only way I was able to research its meaning was in the Old Testament, where it's related to rainbow. But rainbow is related to covenant. And that the same word that T and Do used, they said T told us that we needed to make our commitment to Do. See, this is the way the older members work, and this is why they come in a pair, so that he's not actually talking about himself, because that would look like, I thought you were supposed to overcome self, especially in the third trimester. In the second trimester, it's not so important, because the overcoming isn't about overcoming self. It's about overcoming, having control over our sexuality more, so that we're starting to think that even the thoughts, like Jesus said, that it's not enough to just not lust after somebody else when you're committed to a marriage with somebody. Adultery was lusting for somebody else when you were married to somebody, to another. That's committing adultery. Well, that wasn't committing adultery before Jesus came and updated it. And he said that was also committing adultery, just to lust, to desire that other person. See, that was an upgrade for them. So they didn't need to, they weren't ready for the full extent of what they were going to have to be upgraded to understand. So, I think it's a drink of water time. So what Do had when he was sitting, so Do sitting on his Applewhite horse had the covenant, but it's not just a covenant. The covenant represents all the individuals that formed that covenant. If there aren't any students, then there's no point to any of this. Because the whole reason why the next level sends their older members incarnate is this is the way they get new members. And so they want to put them through a training program to prove that they actually want to do this and that they can hack it. And they're willing to go the distance knowing that they will get help with every step. Nobody is just expected to take leaps before they're ready to take leaps. It's all free will. If you feel like you're not growing fast enough, ask to have it speeded up. Ask Tiendo, speed it up. I want to grow faster. Give me some more lessons. Give me greater opportunities to serve you so that I can graduate into the next level. But if you do that, you're going to get it. It's not going to be easy, but you'll be able to handle it. And if you don't handle it, you'll get another chance to handle it. The thing is, though, when you fail, if you fail, you will fail in some regard at some points. You definitely will have, because your standards will increase, and so your goals will increase. As you get more and more control over your vehicle, so that the vehicle isn't doing anything on its own. That's the object. And not only that the vehicle isn't doing anything on its own, the vehicle isn't doing anything different than what the older members taught. And if all you have is the records of the older members, then that's the best information on what was taught, because it would be current to now. But you're not held accountable to accomplishing more than you're given in mind to help you accomplish it. But there's no limitation to how fast you can grow. However, it doesn't mean that if you just decide right now that you've grown as much as you can grow here and you just want to get on, and so you just want to leave. And so you decide that you want to lay down your life like Tiendo did. Well, I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm not saying that the next level wouldn't take your soul and save it for future opportunity if you were genuinely doing it for Tiendo. But that's not, I don't believe, the lesson that's been given now. The lesson for now is that the best that we can do is to believe that Tiendo were the ones that came from the individuals that created the planets and everything, created the planets and our physical bodies. Because creating the physical bodies has to do with creating the seeds, the sperm and the eggs, and the system for making a reproduction of the body. And all that, the whole genetic system and all the microbes and everything. They created everything. You have to believe, it's required, if you want to be saved for a future opportunity, then you have to believe that. They don't want anybody that can't come up to speed with believing that. And belief doesn't mean that you don't have questions about it. Doesn't mean that you don't have certain doubts about it. And you have to be willing to stand up for that. So there's two prerequisites to actually being saved. That was talked about in the document that Junodi wrote that was about the away team. Towards the end of it, next to the last paragraph, gives those 2 points. But to graduate, to be a member of the next level, then what you have to do is separate from everything in the human kingdom. And anybody can do that now too. That's going to come out actually automatically if you do the other two steps. In other words, if you believe in T and Do as the creators of the planet, or as links to the kingdom that created the planets and everything on them, and you stand up for that, and that means that if somebody came to you and said, do you believe in T and Do? Well, even though it might be not such a good thing for the vehicle to experience, yes would be the answer. Peter flunked that test, but that didn't mean that he flunked out of school. I don't think he did. Peter, that was with Jesus, when he said that he would lay down his life for Jesus. But then when Jesus said that he wasn't ready for that. He wasn't going to do that. And, before the next day, I think is what he was saying, or before 3 days were up, I think is what he was saying, he would deny Jesus. He didn't say that would be after the cock crowed, because the word also means up until, by the time of the cock crowing 3 times. It wasn't like he was saying that you were going to hear that rooster crow 3 times. And if he didn't crow 3 times and then you didn't deny him with each time, I don't remember exactly. I got to go back and look at that so I can talk more specifically to the translation there. But I'm not able to pull that in right now. My memory on. I never did actually try to decipher those words, so I was speaking out of turn there about that verse. So as you open the second seal, there went out another horse, and it was given to him a great sword. Now, a sword is depicted. Sometimes the sword is actually talking about, well, it's always talking about as being a large knife. It's like a machete. It's a machiara, not sure how to pronounce it, or makahira, I guess is the way you say that in the Greek. I probably botched that, but it's a great sword, okay, that he has here. So it's a great knife. Now, in this context, let me look at something here. A sword for thrusting, a curved sword, a large knife used for killing animals and cutting up flesh. Well, since it's said that the one sitting on this would take peace from the earth, and earth meaning human kingdom, and that they should kill one another, and there was given him a great sword. That, to me, adds up to military. That's, you can't take peace from the earth in the military way. And so this red horse, I say, is bringing endless war, which happened as a result of Bush coming into power through the coup d'etat of the Supreme Court, illegally saying that Florida didn't have to recount their votes. and Gore won the popular vote, and he would have won the electoral votes if they had recounted all the votes, that even the ones that they tried to steal away because of the Chads and all the dimples and all that baloney, and all the ways that they pushed a lot of blacks off the voting roster. If you take all that into account, which groups have done since that time, they have determined that in most of the studies, Gore would have won the election, both way by popular and electoral votes. But that wasn't the way the Luciferians wanted it to go. They wanted the warmongers to be there. And that was all predicted. They wrote about it. Cheney and Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz was the one that wrote that document, Rebuilding America's Defenses. Was part of that committee that was called the Committee for a New American Century, or no, Progress for a New American Century, that actually took place in 1997. I think a little bit before Doe and students laid down their lives. That's when they formed that document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, where they said in that document, well publicized, mainstream publicized, not hearsay, not conspiracy theory, that they needed something like Pearl Harbor to stimulate a two-front war. They wanted to rebuild America's defenses so they could be able to fight a two-front war. And what did they get? Exactly what they wanted. And what did they do with a lot of that money? Used it for all their black budget programs. To build weapons, to build laser weapons, to try to find new sources of energy that weren't fossil-driven, fuel-driven, and to perfect nuclear technologies for their energy sources, to build underground bases, to figure out how to potentially combat the space aliens that they were in bed with at the same time as they were afraid of, that some of them were going to attack. All the propaganda machines that they needed to fund, and all the security systems they needed to fund, all the things they needed to fund for when things go awry completely and they've got to try to have control over society, for the martial law that's probably inevitable eventually, even though I don't think they're building camps to put people in. If they're building camps, well, I might be wrong. They might want camps to have all that genetic material available if they've got to survive. So that would be a way of, ensuring that they would have, if they're going to end up taking airplanes to all different places where there are underground bases, and then going into those facilities, they can only have a certain amount of storage to survive off of, and a certain amount of genetic material in sperm and eggs to be able to generate new vehicles, because they're preparing to go underground for 1,000 years. I'm not saying they consciously think that, but see, this is what the Luciferian space aliens know is on the horizon. And the space aliens that are in physical bodies, they have this kind of understanding from their word for word, that passed on information from the past, from their past generations. They're the descendants of, ancestors that went underground to get away from the recycling. They didn't know it was recycling, though. They just thought it was some natural cycle or some man-made cycle or World War III or something that stimulated this and that, or underground drilling that stimulated the earthquakes, or a HARP system that stimulated the earthquakes. I'm not saying that HARP is doing that, because I don't think HARP has that potential to do that much. I think HARP is associated with probably an underground base, probably within under the North Pole somewhere. That might be jointly operated by the Russians and the United States and other countries as well, where Hitler supposedly tried to get to, but maybe didn't get that far. I don't know. But so the same thing's going to happen again, to where there's going to be and so, like I said, anyway, I said enough about that. But I doubt they would want dissidents for that, like the Nazis were rounding up the dissidents and the Jews. Which to them, the Jews were dissidents, because the actual Jews the Jews in World War I was the reason why in World War II they ended up bringing the United States into the fight against the Germans. That's been documented by some people that were involved in the, I'm getting off the track, but you can ask me about that. I'll show you the documentation of what I just said. But there was an agreement made between Jews in Germany with the British that if they could get the United States to come in and wipe out the Nazis, that they would get Palestine, because the Germans were winning the war and the Americans weren't coming to their aid. In fact, the Americans were, some of the corporations in America were in bed with, and some of the politicians were in bed with the Germans for business. They were making money from the Germans, and they were also supplying the English with what they needed to fight the war. And so it's when the Jews from Germany tried to appeal to the Jews in the Americas through the English deal with Palestine, because the English had control over Palestine at that time, that even though they didn't legally have control over it, they just, I think it was like a protectorate or something area. But that's when all of a sudden the media changed in the United States, and they were now talking about all the atrocities that the Germans were committing. And so they built very quickly, because the Jews in the United States all owned the media, even then. They still own the media. I'm not against the Jews. That's the way it came down. The next level, don't look at people and judge them by their ethnicity or color or anything or gender or anything, or sexuality. Uh, they judge them by their behavior and their choices. So whether you're a Christian, Jew, or Islam, or Hindu, or Buddhist, and you're killing somebody, then the next level they do not find favor with you. Unless you repent of that, and that means change your mind and ask for forgiveness, and show that forgiveness to those you harmed, and see to it that you don't fall into that trap again, and continue looking to the next level for help to get back on track. Then I think the next level would forgive even somebody that was a murderer. Because remember, even the victims, if they had a relationship with the next level, when they died, the next level will see to it that they get another chance to live in some way, shape, or form. Actually, I think it works a little different than that, but I'm not sure I understand it, so I'm not going to try to make up stuff. So then the next verse says, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard and the third beast say, come and see, and beheld the black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. Well, I forgot to say on the previous one that I think the 9/11 attack was basically the new Pearl Harbor, and I'm pretty sure that was largely stimulated by individuals in the administration, in the Bush administration. Or, I'm not saying, it might have been strictly military that were behind it. Military intelligence, might have just been CIA, NSA, I don't know exactly, but I don't know if it was totally that or if they had a combination of things going on there. I think they, as much as they could, I mean, in this way, the Luciferians work with the humans so that the humans also have more than one plan. Like with Martin Luther King assassination, it was revealed that by some evidence that there were army sharpshooters ready to shoot him at the same moment that he was shot by whoever else shot him. And there were actually 3 actual hits put out on him for that same moment. If one failed, the other one would follow through. And that's why it became so confusing to follow all these different leads with the mob and stuff. Which that surfaced in a Toronto actual trial with Sandra Day O'Connor presiding over in Toronto, Canada. That information came from William Pepper, who was the James Earl Ray's became his attorney for that trial before James Earl Ray died. Anyway, so James Earl Ray was a patsy. I know, conspiracy theory. Well, everything is a conspiracy theory, right? I'm a conspiracy theory. Tiendo, a conspiracy theory. Jesus is a conspiracy theory. Hitler was a conspiracy theory. Elvis. Who else? Everything we don't want to look at is a conspiracy. Well, it is. I fully agree. There's a conspiracy behind all these things. So, Well, so so the black horse comes along, and it says that the black horse has a pair of balances in his hand. Well, that's actually compared to somebody that's got 2 oxen on a yoke. Okay? Now, who is that? Is it a member of the next level that's sitting on this black horse that is driving or creating driving the pair of balances in his hands of the oxen that are in front of him? So get the picture is you see this individual sitting on a black horse, a black human. So I guess it's like playing that game of horse, like kids used to play, where they, in a pool, they would sit on top of the shoulders of the other, and then they would have two or three people doing that, like they were a tall human, and they would try to topple the one over. And I used to play that when I was a kid. And so this is like you've got this individual sitting on a black human vehicle, and has the reins in his hands of 2 oxen, and he's sitting on the yoke of those oxen. That's the control that has the control over those oxen. He's trying to keep control, trying to keep them going in the same direction. Trying not, one wants to go this way, one wants to go this way. He's trying to stay on the highway. Well, that's what the Luciferian space alien is doing. That's in control of the black vehicle Obama, that is in control, trying to have control over the Republicans and the Democrats. The 2 oxen that want to go in different directions. He's trying to keep them on the path. What is that path? Well, it's described here. How did Obama came into office? What did he come into office with? The greatest financial debacle, financial crisis in the history of the civilization that we know of. It affects the whole globe. Financial crisis. Endless financial crisis. That's what he was given the task. He took the task to preside over. So he's not a next level member. He doesn't know it, but he's being led by a Luciferian space alien in the discarnate world that has a motivation. The motivation is to keep the war machine going, to keep the space program going, to keep the energy programs going, to believe in global warming so that we can keep on developing forms of energy that are more powerful and require less storage capacity and have less residue than fossil fuels. And that's the nukes. But in order to keep the nuclear programs going when they're so toxic to the environment and giving people cancer all over the planet, which of course the CDC won't admit to, but many scientists know that allowing any radiation to escape those reactors is committing suicide for the human species, because those particles don't go away. They go into the atmosphere and then they fall down and they fall into the water supply and they get into all the food and get into our bodies. And one particle lodged in a certain place ends up creating a tumor because the body tries to fight it. And that creates scar tissue that becomes a tumor. And it grows and grows and grows because that particle is still living in that cell. And it's created a war in that area and basically ends up destroying the tissue around it, and that's called cancer. If that tissue is destroyed to where it's around an organ, the organ eventually fails. That's the biggest cause of cancer. Now, it's also in the food, because all those particles ended up getting into the food too. And then on top of that, all the chemical pollution, because of the way science has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and sure they've discovered some good things, but probably some huge percentage of it is actually more detrimental to the planet and the people than the benefits that we've got out of it. Although it provided the next level ways of having this communication, which the next level, they could have done it in other ways, but they know this was going to take place because they know the Luciferian space aliens aren't going to stop until they've got the technology growing so that they can build spacecraft so that they can get off the planet. They want to get off the planet before the next recycling. And the discarnate Luciferians will basically just go into those spacecrafts where they have vehicles that are what they consider to be their family, their vehicles. And then they will leave the planet with those physical vehicles. But before they actually leave the planet, they actually circulate among all the humans that they can use to build their agenda. So what does it say about the balances? Where is the balance being created? Revelation 6:6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou not hurt the oil and the wine. Well, I have to do a better job on some of this. But with prophecy, like I've said before, there isn't just one meaning. There are multiple meanings. I'm not going to go back if I haven't given you multiple meanings to the previous verses right now. But I'll find them. I can find them. Everybody can find them. Not just me, but since some have had a T and No connection and have been digging for this information, and T and No, I believe, want this information to come out. So assigned some the task of, because they wanted to serve, gave them the task to do this, whether they're the mouthpiece for it or the technical aspects behind it, or in any shape or form. Anybody can copy and paste the things that I've discovered into all the Christian chat sites and websites and YouTube channels, comment areas, to suggest to Christians that they might want to look at it this way. We can do a lot of that. That would be in service to the next level, because the next level wants all the truth to come out. So anyway, so we're talking about wheat and barley here, and we're comparing it with money. Well, that's commodities with money. So what do we have? The stock market. So it's no secret that a bigger part of the staff that were in the original administration of Obama, I'm not sure how many are left, were all that were his advisors, were all stock market tycoons, right? and that the most money was made through the stock market because of the financial disasters, because of the games that were being played in the stock market. So that's what's being revealed here. That's what's being unsealed here. This is being unsealed as we speak. Although I knew about it for a number of years now. And I've been writing about it for all those years. But and not hurt the oil and the wine. Well, like I said, it has multiple meanings, but I believe the oil are those that are actually putting out next level information. And the wine are all those who are have received next level information and are in process of becoming. They're fermenting. You know, they're changing. Their blood is becoming wine. It's changing into a new material. Because of receiving the product of the consumption of the oil and producing the light in the words, in the understanding, in the desire to hook up with our older members, T and O, to not be afraid to ask them for help and to be in their service, ask them to help to be in their service, knowing that they're not going to impose something on us that we're not ready to handle. And they will give us the steps necessary so that we can handle those steps, and handle more steps. It's only the Luciferian space aliens that would have us, and our influences, all the human discarnates, all the dead human ghosts, they're understandably frightened of anything T and O because they don't want to lose the vehicles that they can use, and if they even know anything about T and O, they're gonna know that they might not have their way as much with individuals as they gravitate towards T and O. Because that's what all discarnates do. They basically are latching on to humans and time-sharing, agreeing to time-share of the human computer. So the discarnates are actually have these like little agreements with one another that I'm going to use the vehicle now and you can use the vehicle a little bit later. And so when the vehicle is doing different things, different discarnates enjoy that more than others. And they get their buzz from whether it's sexuality or lavishing in a meal. I mean, nothing. We all have to eat. And nothing wrong with having good food and enjoying it. But we all know that it can become, this big sensuous affair that becomes as sensuous as sex for some people. And so when it becomes that sensuous, there's some overcoming needed there. But that overcoming is not going to happen necessarily now, except, well, it can. It can happen to the degree that someone wants it to happen. They just need to ask T and O for help with it. And the same thing with desires for power. That's or angry outbursts. Being somebody that gets angry easily or loses their temper or lords over others or looks down on others. All those things are forms of sensuality too. And if we want help with that, ask T and O for help with it. They'll give us help with it. If we want help with our sexuality, ask T and O for help to not feel so overwhelmed by our sexuality, that we give into it. To any degree. It's up to us to decide if we, how far to go. Like I said, you grow as fast as you want to grow. If you want to get rid of your sexuality totally, ask help at T and Do to how to get rid of your sexuality totally. And you'll see some options. And there's no, the options aren't, when you see the options, it doesn't mean they're telling you to do that. They're just showing you the options, showing you some options. It's up to you to then exercise your mind and say, I'm going to stay away from that, or I'm going to stay away from that, or I don't really want to get involved with that person because, they're a little too promiscuous for me, or whatever, you want to say. But I'm not the one to determine what somebody does and doesn't do. That's not judged by me. I'm a messenger, just showing you the information that's been provided. I'm not going to talk about the next horse yet, the pale horse. The pale. It's not really pale, actually. If you look at that word, it's in the Greek. You will see that it is the Greek word chloros, like chlorophyll, like chlorine, which I think that's where it gets the idea that it's a white powder, because chlorine is kind of a yellowish, pale powder. And but the effect of this is green. It actually means chloros is related to chlorophyll, and it means green. So we're talking about a green horse. Now, I don't know if that means that the next horse, human vehicle, that a Luciferian space alien is going to take over, is going to wear khaki military clothing that's got a greenish look to it, or is going to be somebody that claims to be a Luciferian space alien, or not Luciferian, but claims to be a space alien, and actually has a green pigment to their skin. Or, I mean, that's pretty far-fetched, but I don't know, what all might be possible. Or they might just look like a space alien, and so people might just call them like a Martian. Or they might be from Ireland, to where the Emerald Isle, the Green Kingdom, with their heritage, like McCain was, and like Palin. Well, Palin was the pale. So when she was, possibly coming into office, I was looking at her and saying, "Oh, is that what pale? Palin, pale?" I don't know. I look at all the things that are possible. And by the way, I don't know that Herculebus so-called planet that was leaked, I don't believe that was actually real right now. That just looked kind of foolish. I can't, it's like I'm open to anything really. So it's not like it's not possible. It's all possible, whether even if the next level just wanted to make something look like a planet to us, so that we would see that. Didn't have to really be a planet, but it could have been something they could have transmitted to that satellite dish that was in space that took that picture, if that's what happened. And it could have also been the photoshopping. And it could have, but believe it or not, even though it could have been a photoshopping of somebody wanting to play with the people's heads, the next level could have suggested it to them. Because the next level will make suggestions, I believe, to people, to humans, especially that are asking. But even if they're not asking, to make a suggestion like that isn't going to do that human any harm. It's not like going against their will to give them that idea, why don't you, put that out there and then tell them that some NASA people leaked that information, and then down the road we'll prove that they were wrong, and so all those conspiracy nuts will have egg on their face. Well, I don't mind having egg on my face, because what do I got to lose? So I'm willing to consider everything. But so when I came out and said, though, that I believe that Ison is the depiction of Revelations 15:1, that is basically revealing the seven trumpets. No, I mean the seven angels that will have vials to pour out on the planet, on the human kingdom, which is yet to come, I believe. I still feel that way, even though I saw a picture from supposedly a Google map of the moon image that someone took and was able to enlarge in some way, that showed, if you haven't seen this, look for might be under a moon base or a triangle spacecraft on the moon, because that's what it looks like. It looks like 7 lights in the triangle shape, just the angle. You don't see the whole triangle. You just see the right angle of it. Which one commenter said, gosh, that looks like what might have flown over Phoenix that time in 1997, the Phoenix Lights. I'm not sure if that was next level or if that was space alien. And I don't know if this was a Photoshop deal, but I don't know. It's hard to know for sure because Comet Ison, I'm not sure where it is now, and if anybody can see it. I don't know. I haven't seen any new videos from BP Earthwatch about Ison, so maybe it landed on the moon, and it's the next level, allowing us to see the 7 lights, being the 7 angels with vials that are getting ready to come over here, each one of them one at a time, to deliver some very big problems, calamities, yes, plagues, calamities, medicine. Tiendo considered to be earthquakes and things like that, tornadoes, to be medicine for the humans, to help them shake them up a little bit, to get them to look up. Ask God for help. That's what good comes out of that. From those things. If they ask God for help, then they might be able to live through that. If they only ask God for help and they die because of some calamity to the environment, well, they're going to die anyway, eventually. So to the next level, it doesn't make much difference if they die then or if they die in a few seconds later, by next level time. Because to the next level, a day is like 1,000 years. But according to this prophecy of the pale horse, or pale green horse, power is going to be given to them over 1/4 of the people of the earth. And that there's going to be military killing, kill with the sword, famine, kill with hunger, kill by death, which Is that apokatino? That's a strange word, usage of that word. See, this is not kill. Kill by death. Oh, this is saying kill the body. Death of the body is what that actually means. It's Santos. But I think that is actually what we're talking about here is the power of death. Oh no, okay. See, Santos, I'm not going to go through it now. I'll go through it more later, but is related to the one who is called well, that's the Luciferian space alien we're talking about. And their kind of death is death of the soul and spirit. And what it says here in the definition from the Bible software that I'm using, it says, with the implied idea of future misery in hell. So they're able to kill to where the spirit and the soul don't end up getting saved by the next level. They can take away your soul from you, if you have a soul, or your spirit that is a potential receiver of a soul. We don't have to know who has a soul seed and who doesn't. It doesn't make any difference. As far as we're concerned, everybody can have a soul seed, and if they want it. So all you got to do is ask T&O for help, and they'll come down and give you one. But usually you won't ask for that help unless you already received one. But even though if you might have received one, it could have become so subdued by all the misinformation that made somebody feel like thinking about talking to somebody in space or talking to somebody that might have any relationship to what the Christians call God is out of the question because of what they see demonstrated by many of the Christians over history, which were the Christians that were actually related to false Christs, any that were doing those terrible things to people in the Middle Ages, were torturing people because they believed a little bit something different than somebody else. That's all Luciferian behavior. The Vatican, people in the Vatican are some of the descendants of some of those. And being killed with the beasts of the earth is being killed by, I wonder what beast is in that context. I forgot. Therion. Well, it doesn't have to be plural, so it's a noun, so it could be plural, maybe not. I have to do more research on that one. I haven't been into the Revelations chapter 6 for quite a while, so I need to revisit it in order to refresh my mind on some things and also to have a better interpretation, translation of these words for a future broadcast. But that's a pretty good overview for now. Now, I wanted to just get back with the last 5 minutes to Revelation 11. Where I don't know if I made it clear that these two individuals and these two olive trees and these two candlesticks are Christ's. So if they're Christ, anointed ones or Christ, there's no other Christ. Moses and Elijah weren't Christ, in the sense that Christ means that, well, let me take it back. I believe they were Christ, actually. But they weren't Christ in the context of bringing the student body through their chrysalis experience, the Jesus Christing, to where they would be willing to lay down their lives for him, for for Christ, for Jesus. See, Moses and Elijah weren't at that stage, and they could only move one step ahead of the student body. So when we talk about Moses and Elijah, we're talking about those physical vehicles that the older member from the next level was using. So the older member from the next level, although he had overcome the human condition and graduated into the next level, that made him a Christ. Wasn't teaching the final trimester of that birth and that graduation while he was incarnate as Moses and then as Elijah. But he was teaching that when he was incarnate as Jesus. That's why Jesus was a Christ. Because Jesus instructed the students to give their lives. And that's what a Christ does. To lay down their lives. Which is what took place in 1997 with the 39, though and the 38 students. Which I'm going to post some additional updates to that document on my sawyerhg.wordpress.com entry. I keep on expanding it, but it's becoming better and better in terms of actually really talking to the specific meanings of the words in a, I think, a more organized way than I've ever done before. I've been through it now several times, trying to make it better. But here's where Jesus was preparing them to lay down their lives in the third trimester. This is my commandment. This is John 15:12. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Now he's going to define that love. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. He goes on to say, ye are my friends, if you do whatever I command you. See, he has to give instructions. You have to do what they say. That's right, he becomes the teacher, and the teacher tells you what to do. He becomes your captain. If you were in the military, you would give instructions and you would do them, and you wouldn't think, oh, how dare him tell me what to do? Oh, what does he think he is? You've enlisted in his program. You've told him that you want him to be the captain. So you have to do what he commands you to do. If you don't want to do that, then get out of the program. That's what I'm saying to anybody that gives me that backlash, which I hear, through the voices that are the Luciferian space aliens and the human discarnates that try to influence me all the time. Anyway, the next verse. Henceforth I call you not servants. So you're not a servant anymore. For the servant doesn't know what the Lord does. Anyway, I only have 6 seconds, so I have to end it there. But I'll continue on with the next broadcast. Have a good night.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Okay. All right. So I'm still broadcasting. I'm still saving my broadcast here. So no, I'm going to just end it now. Have a good night. We'll go over some more in the next broadcast.